Hi students, hope you all are safe in home. Let's continue the interesting topic pollination. Previous class we discussed in detail about types of pollination. Now let's discuss agents of pollination. Agents of pollination. There are some agents which carried out pollination. Based on the agents, there are two different types. They are abiotic agents and biotic agents. Abiotic agents and biotic agents. It's also not a new topic to you. You all studied in the lower classes what's meant by abiotic and biotic. Abiotic and biotic agents are helps in pollination. Here what are the abiotic agents? They are classified into anemophily and hydrophily. Anemophily and hydrophily are abiotic agents. Biotic agents are known as zoophily. Zoophily is the biotic agents. Anemophily is the type of pollination which is carried out by wind. Hydrophily is carried out by water. And zoophily carried out by animals including insects. So, animals and insects, zoophily animals, and insect pollinated flowers are called as entomophily. Entomophily. This is insect. So, agents of pollination. Today the question is agents of pollination. Based on the agents, there are two different types of pollinating agents. They are classified into abiotic agents and biotic agents. You know the meaning abiotic. Abiotic is non-living. So, here the wind and water which are abiotic. They are help in pollination. And biotic agents are zoophily, that is carried out by animals including insects. Insect pollinated plants are called as entomophilous. So, the type of pollination is entomophily. Let's see one by one. Anemophily. Anemophilous flower. These all flowers or the plants, especially in the flower, when it carried out pollination, the flowers are arranged in such a way to adapt it to these agents. These all agents helps the flower to pollinating process. Anemophilous flower, there are certain characteristic features shows in each and every flowers. Anemophilous flowers, there are some characteristic features. Hydrophilous flower, it shows some characters, and zoophilous flower as well as the entomophilous flowers which shows different characteristic features. What are the characteristic features found in anemophilous flower and anemophilous plants? This anemophilous, so what's the definition anemophily? Wind pollinating flowers are called as anemophilous. The phenomenon is called as anemophily. The process of wind pollination is called anemophily and the flowers are said to be anemophilous. Anemophilous. Likewise, water. When water as an agent of pollination, the phenomenon is hydrophily and the flower is said to be hydrophilous flower. So, here anemophilous flowers or anemophilous, actually it is these plants, these anemophilous plants are situated in wind exposed regions. The anemophilous plants, that means the wind pollinating plants, are situated in the wind exposed regions. And this process is a chance event. When the wind blows, this flowers by wind, through the wind, the pollen grains are carried out and effective pollination taking place. So, it is a chance event. So, at the time of wind blows, there is a chance of wasting of pollen grains, because when the wind blows, so many pollen grains are wasted when the pollen grains are transmit from one flower to another. So, it is a chance event, and the plants are situated in wind exposed regions. Wind exposing regions, these plants are available, anemophilous plants. What are the characteristic features observed in this type of plants as well as this type of flowers? So, what are the examples? First, you know the examples of wind pollinating plants. The wind pollinating flowers are grasses, grass, bamboo, palm, coconut and sugarcane, maize, zea mays. These all are examples of wind pollinating plants. Grasses are well known example of wind pollinating flowers. So, grass flower, you all observe the grass flowers. These flowers, what are the characteristic features these flowers shows? These flowers are not well developed and it is inconspicuous. It is not brightly colored, it is not producing any scent or odor. So, it is inconspicuous flower. So, let us see what are the characteristic features these plants shows or these flowers possess. These flowers are producing inconspicuous, that means there is no specific nature of this flower. They are very small, they are colorless, they are odorless and so on. So, this type of inflorescence is catkin inflorescence. It shows catkin inflorescence or spike inflorescence, and the flowers are pentulous. Pentulous flowers. The grass flowers are pentulous. It droops downward, it droops or it bent downward, and it possesses catkin inflorescence. Catkin inflorescence which do not possess perianth, either the perianth is absent or it is reduced perianth. So, no petals in these flowers, catkin inflorescence. And the spike or spike inflorescence, in the spike inflorescence there are indeterminate axis, that means elongated axis, inflorescence axis, which shows sessile flowers. So, in spike inflorescence, the inflorescence axis is elongated, indeterminate inflorescence, and sessile flowers are attached, shows that spike inflorescence, and they are not colored like this. It is not colored, it do not produce any scent or there is no odor, there is no smell or there is no nectar secretion. So, it is carried out by wind. So, it is not producing scent to attract the insects or anything, that is why it is inconspicuous, the flowers are. And the axis of the flower, this is one of the examples, zea mays. So, the axis of the flower, this is the male flower, here the floral axis is elongated, and this is the female flower here, this is monoecious condition. In this, the flowers are produced in the long axis and it is exposed out of the leaves. Sometimes when the new leaf develops, before that the flowers are developed. The flower develops before the leaf develops to expose its stigmatic surface above the leaf. Such a way the flowers are adapted. So, it do not produces most of the flowers, they do not produce the perianth, or the perianth is either it is absent or it is reduced. And the flowers possess numerous anthers. Anthers are many. So, in the pollen grains are more in numbers. Enormous number of pollen grains are produced, because when the wind is carrying out this pollen, many pollens are wasted. So, certainly few pollens which is fall on by chance, it is getting chance to fall on the surface of stigma. So, enormous number of pollen grains are produced. The pollen grains are dry weight, it is light, it is thin, it is not too much of weight, and the anthers are more, the pollen grains also enormous. And in this anther which is certain flowers, these anthers burst open violently and it liberate the pollen grains. So, certain flowers which spread the pollen grains within the breeze or the wind, certain flowers which burst open violently and it liberates the pollen grains easily carried out through wind to bring about effective pollination. There is an example we are going to see, that is XII maize inflorescence. Now, look at this diagram. This XII maize which is one of the wind pollinated flower, that is anemophilous flower. In this this condition is monoecious condition. Monoecious. What is meant by monoecious condition? The male and the female flowers are present in the same plant. Unisexual flowers. This is male flower. The male flower is known as tassel. The name of the male flower of maize is tassel, and the female flower, this is the female flower. The name of the female flower is cob. So, tassel and cob, this is the male flower, this is the female flower. It is seen in the same plant. So, this condition is known as monoecious. Monoecious is a unisexuality, it is the condition of unisexual flowers producing within the same plant. Same plant, two different flowers, male and female separately. And the nature of this tassel, the male flower is usually produced in the terminal region. This region, terminal region, the tassel is produced, and the cob is produced below this male inflorescence. Male inflorescence produced at the terminal region, top of the plant, and the female flower produced at the base below this male flower. Now, in this, here this XII maize flower which is not carried out by light breeze. So, when a heavy wind shakes, if the wind shakes the flower, when the wind shakes this male inflorescence, that is the tassel is shaken by wind, the pollen grains are dusted on the stigmatic surface of this region. So, this is the region which is known as silk. Usually, another characteristic feature of the wind pollinating flower, that is anemophilous flower, is the stigmatic surface is very long and feathery. Sometimes it is branched or it is wing shaped. So, here it is very long and either branched or feathery or very long stigmatic surface. So, here also it is very long stigmatic region. So, when the wind shakes the tassel, the pollen grains are dusted on the stigmatic surface. So, the stigmatic regions are adapted in such a way to catch the pollen grains easily. So, this is the adaptation observed in XII maize. So, XII maize is one of the example which shows anemophilous plant and anemophilous adaptation, anemophilous. Then another example is known as hydrophily. What is meant by hydrophily? Pollination takes place by water is called as hydrophily. pollination takes place by water is called hydrophily. You know, there are many examples of hydrophily. One of the example is Vallisneria spiralis, hydrilla, or few examples of hydrophilous flower. Though there are number of hydrophilous flower, all the hydrophilous flowers are not pollinating by water. For example, water lily and Eichhornia and water lily, pollination takes place by either insect or wind. So, it is not hydrophilous flower. Based on this hydrophily, there are two different types of hydrophily. They are epihydrophily and hypohydrophily. Two types of hydrophilous, epihydrophily and hypohydrophily. Here there is an example, this diagram which shows Vallisneria spiralis. In Vallisneria spiralis, the plant is dioecious. Maize is the example of monoecious plant. This is dioecious. What is dioecious? The male and female flowers develop in two different plants. That condition is called as dioecious. So, two definitions are there, monoecious and dioecious. What is monoecious? Male and female flower present or produced within the same plant is called as monoecious. When the male flower, here in this Vallisneria, this is the female flower produced in separate plant and this is the male flower produced in another plant. So, if the male as well as female flowers develop in two different plants, the condition is dioecious. This is monoecious, this is dioecious. Look at this diagram. This Vallisneria, this is the example of hydrophily. Hydrophily, it comes under epihydrophily. What's the difference between epi and hypohydrophily? Epihydrophily, the pollination taking place on the surface of water. Here the pollination taking place on the surface of water. And hypohydrophily, pollination takes place below, under water, below the surface of water. This is on the surface of water. So, one of the very good example is Vallisneria spiralis. In Vallisneria, this is the plant Vallisneria which produces a ribbon shaped leaf, and it is a submerged rooted plant. Vallisneria is a dioecious. The characteristic feature of Vallisneria is dioecious, submerged and rooted plant. Dioecious plant, what's dioecious condition? The male and female flowers developed in separate plants, dioecious. Submerged, the plant is, the nature of the plant is it immersed in water. It's not floating on the surface, which is present under the water, below the surface of water. So, submerged and rooted plants. Submerged rooted plant, dioecious plant is Vallisneria. At the time of pollination, this flower, female flower develops in this plant. The female flower which rise at the level of water at the time of pollination. Actually, this flower is developed in the coiled structure. So, this coiled stretch, and at the time of pollination, it stretch out and rise on the surface of water. It rise on the surface of water, and there is a depression shows in this. There is a cup shaped depression developed in this region. Now, the male flower develops in another plant. This male flower detached, these are the male flowers. These flowers detached from this plant, from this inflorescence, the male flowers are detached and float on the surface of water. So, these are the male flowers and this is the female flower. Now, this male flower, when it is come and contact with this female flower, this depression, here already there is a depression which gets pollinated effectively. So, get attached with this male flower to the stigmatic surface of the female flower. As soon as the pollination occurs, this coiled structure which coils around and again it comes under the water and it develops the fruit. So, this is the condition observed in Vallisneria. The type of pollination is known as epihydrophily. The nature of this is epihydrophily. One of the example of epihydrophily is Vallisneria spiralis. Another example is called as hypohydrophily. Now, this condition is epihydrophily, the condition, the pollination which is taking place on the surface of water. Now, hypohydrophily, under the surface of water, there is an example, Zostera marina. Zostera marina is the sea grass. So, this Zostera marina is a marine sea grass. So, this plant produces pollen grains. The pollen grains or shape of the pollen grain is needle shape. Needle shape pollen grain which produced under the water, and these pollen grains have the gravity which is similar to that sea water. So, this pollen grains, when it is released from this male flower, these are float in any depth of the sea water. At any depth the male flowers are floats, and when the female flowers are come in contact, effective pollination taking place. At any depth the pollination taking place under water. So, this condition is hypohydrophily. The example is Zostera marina. Zostera marina is the example of hypohydrophily. Vallisneria spiralis is the example of epihydrophily. Then, what is meant by zoophily? Zoophily is the condition pollination taking place by animals. So, animal pollinating plants are called as zoophilous. Zoophily. Animals including, there are number of animals like bats, ants, snails, then insects. These all are comes under zoophily. The insect pollinated plants or insect pollinated flowers are called as entomophilous flower. Entomophily. Insect pollinating, if pollination taking place by insect is called as entomophily, and the flowers are known as entomophilous flower. Then these flowers, anemophilous flowers, are brightly colored to attract the animals, and also it provides shelter, food to these agents. So, let us see this biotic agents, zoophily, in the next class. So, once we recall what you learned today, the agents of pollination. The agents are important for the process pollination. Number of agents are used for or helped in pollinating process. They are classified into two different types. They are abiotic agents and biotic agents. As you all know, abiotic agents, they are non-living agents like wind and water. And biotic agents, they are animals. So, let us see abiotic agents and few examples. Anemophily, the definition is wind pollinating flowers are called as anemophilous. The flowers are anemophilous and the phenomenon is called anemophily. Likewise, water pollination taking place by water is called as hydrophily, and the flowers are said to be hydrophilous. So, hydrophilous, there are two different types, epihydrophily and hypohydrophily. Epihydrophily example Vallisneria spiralis and hypohydrophily example Zostera marina. And before that, anemophilous flower. Anemophilous flower, example, Zea mays. So, draw these two diagrams very neat in the note and learn this abiotic agents. Hope you understand very clear this topic. Thank you.